Go the back road. Yeah. All right. So what we'll do is we'll go out.
That's Christian on the right there. We're discussing the route. That's Scott on the left.
Tough road. I don't like hard. Stay left. Yeah, just stay next to the white line. Stay next to the white line. Yeah, let's stay on 1488. Stay next to the white line.
Michael said he didn't want to do 1488. We like it in a big group. It's got a big shoulder. The other road he was suggesting is kind of narrow.
All right, buddy.
And busy. So
anyway, we're going to go out 1488 to Magnolia. We're going to turn left of the Jack in the Box.
we have a lot of flats on 1488 because some people run over stuff. And it's just luck of the draw sometimes. You know, it just happens. So that's why Michael is suggesting that we don't use it. But, you know, that's why you heard me say stay next to the white line. It's cleaner there. So Scott is suggesting the route. And, you know, he said once we get out there, we'll make final decisions.
Basically take 1486 north. We'll come back on Jackson Road, make a left turn on 149. We'll do the
Yeah, 1486 to Jackson Road, there was a lot of action on there. I had to let them go. These boys were hammering today. We had a couple of ringers in the group. You know, I wasn't ready to go that hard after I spent too much time pulling early in the ride. And at the moment they started to hammer, my legs were like, forget it. So it was either back off or crawl home.
Let's beat it.
And we had 2 hours
Hey,
left.
Jerry.
That's Jerry over there.
He were like third or second. Chapel Hill. Oh, you got 8th? Okay. That's
so
cool.
yeah, Jerry got 8th in Chapel Hill. That's one of our local races. It's real hilly.
Okay.
It's about an hour west of town.
Tough course.
Tough course, and
Well,
it was his first race.
Tough course.
But he's a very fit rider.
This is
Jerry's one of the guys that are pushing the pace later. So I introduced him to Christian here.
All right, let's do this.
You guys, those of you who've been following the group, Christian has ridden with us multiple times. He's been busy traveling this year, doing different rides all over the country. So he's back home this weekend. And we hooked up and brought him out here on this ride.
There you go, my brother.
So I hand Paul the camera. Paul loves to film this thing. He's gotten so good at it. He's making me look bad. So I hand him the camera and we roll out. What I do is I set it up and I kind of make sure it syncs with my head unit, and then I hand it to him. That way we get the stats right when I do this thing. That's Paul H on the left. And this is Jerry next to me here. On this ride, Paul, myself, and Christian joined us today. We left Northampton. He doesn't show on here because he had not posted on Strava by the time I did the list. We met Team RREC, Greg Schatz over there. This was my first time riding with Greg. The usual guys were there, you know, Paul H, Mark, Scott, everybody. But we had Jerry on here as well, a guy named Dan. And so the pace was really quick early on. We went through an area called Sawmill Road, past Magnolia, came back to Magnolia on 1774, and then we got on 1486 there. You will see Greg separate from us there. I pretty much let the group go for a bit on 1486. They were just riding a lot faster than I wanted to go. And so at this point we went straight, they went left, because by this point our ride was going to be 4.5 hours. We needed to get back in. So there's lots of action, lots of activity, and I hope that you all will enjoy the clips. We went back to Northampton via the bike path. Christian rode with us because we started together and ended together. So should be a nice, fun ride. Come along for the ride. So Jerry and I chatting as we roll out of the parking lot.
Clear.
That's Christian up there on the left. And there's a new guy here in front of Christian called Malcolm. We end up chatting in a little bit. He has an Australian accent, and when I said, man, you sound like an Aussie, he made a joke. You know, so I'm not sure if he was just being facetious or not, but he's from Utah and he's visiting. Right in this corner here, where he stopped because Mike has a flat. Mike rides to come and meet the group. And so he was on the way to meet the group at the parking lot, and he had a flat right here. So I walked up to him and I told him, I said, no, we've talked about this before. You're not supposed to have a flat early in the ride. That's what Paul's laughing at. So I'm over there and I give somebody my bike in a little bit so I can help him. I sped it up because it took a bit. So I think that's Malcolm's holding my bike. And I helped Mike. I checked. He didn't have anything in the tire or anything. So could have been just a pinch flat. We ended up having a couple of flats. There's another one in a little while. But, you know, sped it up here. The guys are chatting over here. That's Greg Shots on the right. And that's Jerry on the left. And then Paul H in the yellow. And they're chatting. And I'm over there helping out. So what I did, I just went back and sped it up because at this point, we're almost done. And we just verified everything with Mike's bike. It just makes it easier if somebody can hold the frame or help look for what's maybe in the tire while the guy is getting his tube out. So we'll all kind of help out to speed up the process. And so we're done.
Yeah, you need to.
So there's Mike right there. His tire's repaired. That's him right there on the right in front of us. The flats happen. I mean, it's not a matter. I mean, sometimes you end up having a period of time where you go without flats for a long time. Then you have a period of time where you just seem to have a lot of flats. All you want to do is to make sure you get to the bottom of what causes the flat, because it can help you avoid future flats. Because sometimes you can have a defective tire that has like a rim with missing fibers and maybe puncturing your tube, or you just end up with repeated flats. Or you can have the tape in your rim not covering the spokes, the spokes on the inside. There's a lot of little things. So make sure you get to the bottom of what causes your flat or what caused a particular flat. Don't just fix it and go on, especially if you're having more than one. You shouldn't be having flats that frequently. And then just avoid going over rocks while you're seated. Anytime you go over debris, little rock, no matter how small they are, unweight the saddle. Put more weight on the pedals. You don't have to stand, but transfer your weight to the pedals, like when you're riding hard. And just take the load off the saddle. Let the bike bounce over it, because it's the rear wheel that gets most of the impact. I have the surface light on my bike, and this morning Christian was laughing at me. He said, "Man, that thing is bright." It was blinking, so I put it on just steady. That's why you see it on steady. And it's a very bright light. It's great when you ride solo, but in the group, it's kind of loud. I'm using the blue frame, so I didn't have my new light on there. I didn't want to switch it, so I just went with it.
Don't mention it.
I found out on Sunday after this ride that I ended up doing this ride with 65 or 70 PSI. I don't know what was going on. I even sent Paul a text about it. I'm still investigating what happened, because I checked all my tires and everything. It's not the tube, nothing was flat, but for some reason I found out on Sunday.
Does a lot of editing and
Paul's talking to Mike about the filming, how we do on the channel. But what I was saying is that after riding with Mark and them on Sunday after this ride, I got home. I had like 68 PSI in the tire. It just kind of felt squishy, and something told me to just check it. So I hook it up to my pump real quickly, because it has a solid gauge on there. It's 68 PSI. I'm like, you got to be kidding. It was fine while I was seated, but every time I would stand, it felt a little weird. And so that threw me off. So I ended up doing this ride on lower than normal pressure without being aware. There were one or two times in the ride where I stood and the bike felt a little weird, but I kind of dismissed it. And so I was telling Paul about it. I was like, that's all I need, to find a way to ride, to work harder than I need to. Needless to say, I got home being who I am and ran a series of tests to make sure that the tube or the tire wasn't compromised, and everything was fine. So I don't understand what was going on. It was just one of those weird things. So we stopped for another light. What I do here in this part of the edits, for those of you who've been keeping up with the group, I just kind of move things along. Sometimes I'll speed it up if there's nothing going at the light. This light, I think I sped it up because it ended up being a little longer than normal. Or is it the next one? One of them I sped it up because we're just sitting there doing nothing. So I'm going to point out all the hammerheads for today's ride. There's one behind Paul coming along. That's Jerry, the one I pointed out. This guy on the right, also behind his name is Paul on the right. So we got several Pauls in the group. That's Mark coming by. And this is what I'm talking about. Paul and I have been working on filming from behind. See, he has the camera turned behind, but nobody can tell. And I told him, we talked about that. I said, that's better because we had some people posing. In one ride we did, I think it was Rudy smiling at the camera. I'm like, come on. So I told Paul, let's do it in a sneaky manner so we can catch them working. And so we laughed about it. That's what he's doing. He's doing a great job. That's Gary there. And that's Malcolm. Malcolm used to live here. He doesn't live here anymore. He's visiting in town from Salt Lake City, Utah. So he came to hook up with the boys. That's Scott. Scott went to push the light for the signal to change. So I sped it up here because this light was very long for some reason. We stayed in the lane going straight, and you can see that car could turn. So now we get the green light, and we resume. And because the rain was threatening, that's why you see me with my mud guards on the bike, the SKS. And I had people say, if it starts to rain, I'm going to follow you, you know. What Paul and I do when it gets really wet on the ride, we don't follow the other riders. We let the group go and we stay back maybe 1 or 2 car lengths because there's no point in getting that dirty spray in our faces because it gets grit in your eyes and your mouth, and it's just not cool. So whenever we ride in the rain with other people, we back off when the rain gets heavy or the road is very wet. And I put it on anyway because all night Friday it rained. You can see the road is somewhat wet. So we had stretches where it's wet, and then it rained on us a little bit. We kind of missed the rain, like it would rain, and then we get to the area. And so the roads were wet.
What are you trying to say?
So Victor's bugging Paul and he said we don't have road bikes because he sees the, you know.
Apparently you go for the looks, huh?
I like your, call those like your rainmaker.
So Victor says we have rainmakers on our bike.
Well, you will be thankful following me one day.
Now, if the road's very wet, even the mud guards will spray a little bit if you go through a lot of standing water. I mean, just the same thing in a car, you know, but just for regular rain with no water sitting on the road, it spares you. And after this ride, all I had to do was clean my drivetrain. I was ready to go on Sunday. So it does make a difference. I'm sold on it. It just makes no sense to not have it. Unless you're caught out without protection, it's better to have it. Because no more do I have to worry about my shorts being soaked with the dirty water from the road. And then the bike, the saddle's not full of sand underneath the rails because you get all of that from the road. Yeah, that's one of the hammerheads there. That's Dan. So Dan, Jerry, and let's see who, Gary. They were the guys that decided to go. Later in the ride, I decided to pull out of the pace line because Dan here was literally sprinting up the hill. And Dan's a lightweight guy, so I'm like, I'm not going to sprint with him up the hill. I've got 2 hours left in my ride. So you have to make those decisions. It's a group ride. Like I said, I come to get tired on Saturday, so I come to work hard. And on this ride, when I ride with these guys, I'm not shy. I pull because I want to work out. And that's the way I used to train when I competed. I would work really hard and then still go with the harder effort. So maybe in a week or 2, we'll get a ride where if we get these hotheads, because it's only as good as the guys that show up. Like today, we had a lot of people that wanted to go fast, and it varies. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll film something to where I go. Maybe I'll get the camera from Paul because we're not sure whether his knee's ready for that level at this point. What we may do is just he'll pass the camera and I'll take it with me in the break or something. But today I kind of let the break go and stayed with the second group. You'll see it. It's very interesting. Lots of good riding. And this is the main light before we hit what we call the open road. We get it out of town now. So we basically choose routes, not just with the group. Even when I ride solo, I choose a route that within 15 minutes or so I'm out of town. And then you can ride for like 10 kilometers without having to stop. So you can get a good workout in. Because it's hard to work out when you're stopping all the time. Not that you have to go out of town all the time. I mean, in your neighborhood, what you can do is just make sure after the stop you accelerate back to your cruising speed quickly. This guy was chatting with us, the guy in the pickup truck. He was telling us, he said, man, it's a muggy, it's very steamy this morning. The next day, Sunday, was much better. On Sunday, fall came in, but Saturday night, it rained heavily. And then Sunday was much cooler. So fall is definitely here in the Houston area. But we still get hot days until maybe late October before we get the first front. So this is 1488. This was the road that Michael was saying that he didn't like because it seemed to have a lot of flats on it. The road's fine. The reason we like it is look at the shoulder. We've got a big group. We've got a nice shoulder. We can ride two abreast. Michael's on the left of Paul. Paul's greeting him. And so there are parts of the road where people drink and throw bottles out of their cars, and it gets all crushed into little pieces of glass, so you have to watch for those. And then there are parts of the road where you have a lot of gravel, and there are little rocks in the gravel, and if you remain seated on some of those, if it catches your tire just right, and you're not a lightweight guy, yeah, you can have a flat, you know. So those are the kind of things that Michael was saying about. You can see people on the road here probably avoiding debris. So Paul is filming with what we discussed, and you can see people are not noticing that the camera is pointed back, so that they're just riding. That's what I told them. That's what we need to do instead of putting it up in the air. So that way you just get a shot of people riding. They're not that aware of the camera. That's Christian pointing out debris. I think that's Paul H on the right. If you notice, maybe we'll get another shot of Paul H. He's got long sleeves. Paul H and Dan here in front of Paul. Dan is very sensitive to the sunlight. Dan has sunblock on his face. Even though it's a cloudy day, he's very sensitive to that. And so is Paul. You see, Paul H has long sleeves behind Christian there. He wears a long sleeve whenever possible to keep the sun off his arms. I used to use, you see Christian looking around, Paul? That's something you need to do. And the reason I mention that is we got a request from one of our patrons, Chris Roxbury. Chris said, what do you need to focus on in a fast-paced line? I'm going to do a video later in the week just dramatizing it more in detail. The main thing is don't focus on the wheel in front of you. Now, I'm going to say that with a caveat. You've got to be aware of where the wheel is. You want to be within about a foot if you want to benefit from the draft. So get as close as you can without overlapping. But once you get that distance, try to maintain that without looking just at that wheel. Kind of do when you're driving your car, how you glance around. Like you saw Christian looking around. Look around the rider. Move left or right a little bit. Not, drastic. Just drift. You see how the camera's drifting? That's what Paul's doing. Paul's drifting left and right so he can see around Dan here. That's what you want to know what's coming. So you drift, you glance up the road, you come back, you make sure you're not overlapping the wheel. The only time it's okay to overlap is when you're in an echelon, because the rider will know the wind is coming from one side and you guys are actually literally on each other's hips. But normally, when there's a doubt, do not overlap, because if anything happens and the rider hits your front wheel, you stand a better chance of falling. The guy who's sitting will not fall if you hit their rear wheel. So you can see here, it's getting a little yo-yo-y, so Paul is moving to one side, the other. You see, he's closer here. But he's not really just looking at that wheel. He'll glance from time to time to make sure he doesn't overlap with his front wheel. The camera makes it seem closer than he really is. But what happens is, if you are going to overlap, you see how he's moving to the right? He's doing that to catch the wind so he doesn't have to brake. So in a fast-paced line, you want to focus on being smooth. You want to focus on maintaining your position and not making any kind of drastic movements. That's the biggest thing to do. Just stay smooth and look around so you can anticipate. Don't depend on the warnings. Look around them. Don't ride blind. So you can see Malcolm. I think Malcolm and I were riding side by side. He decided to get in the drive. The pace has picked up a little bit. You see the road's a little wet. That's why we got the mud guards on. That's one of the reasons I'm at the front, because if I were behind these guys, you see how the camera's picking up moisture? Paul ends up catching it. I mean, he did a great job. Some of it I edited out down later on. He tells me later that there's water all over from the road. There's no mud guards on these guys, so it picks up water. And that's why your chances of flat will increase. If you think about it, if you break glass at home and you use a wet paper towel to pick it up, the glass sticks to it. This is where I edited some of the blurred images out. So that's why you just see a little bit, because it was there for quite a while. And I just edited to where for time and the content kind of stays the same, so we're not missing out. Here's where Paul cleans it, catches, because sometimes you're not always aware. I stayed at the front quite a bit. I mean, at this point the effort is not that hard for me. I wanted a good workout because during the week I did not get to ride too much. I went out one day during the week, so I really wanted to ride hard today. I rode a lot harder than I should have until hour 2, and when they turned it on, you'll see. And that's another thing you have to watch. You have to make sure you don't pedal squares. So it was either I go too far into the red for me, or let them go and still be able to ride, in a decent manner. That's the key. You have to decide how much into the red you want to go. Everybody's operating at a different level. So if you're not very fit, don't go to the front and pull too long, especially early in the ride. Sit in and wait, like I've said before, and use your energy to stay with the faster riders when they decide to go. Now right here I pull off and I'm drifting back. A lot of the heavy hitters are back there chatting. We haven't really started going yet. And Paul leaves a gap here, so I slip in front of him. So even though I'm talking to Paul, my focus is on what's going on the road ahead of these guys, as well as keeping my eye on the wheel in front of me. The reason you want to do that, regardless of how tight the pace line is, even when the pace line is not, especially when the pace line is not tight, you want to make sure you pay even more attention, because when the pace line is tight, everybody's focused on riding. When people are like goofing off in the ride, what I call goofing off, meaning they're just chatting, parts playing, you haven't really started riding, that's when a lot of accidents can happen. So be very wary when you guys are not riding hard yet. Pay even more attention, because once the pace picks up, everybody gets to the business of riding. In my opinion, it's safer then. And all you focus on is, I gotta stay smooth and stay in the draft. But you still got to look around to know what's coming, so you can kind of anticipate holes in the road or whatever. Always want to be aware of that. But the faster the ride, the faster the pace, the closer you want to be. The slower the pace, the more alert you want to be, because that's when people mess up. I hope this helps. I will do a video where I will use 2 of my bikes later in the week to kind of just demonstrate what I'm talking about. Will make more sense. You can hear the wind, and all I'm doing is sitting. You see my pocket on the right? I've got my shoe covers in there. Should the rain pick up, my plan was to cover my shoes. I don't like my feet to be squishy for hours at a time, so I'm gonna try to put on the shoe covers And I think Christian brought his too. We're talking about it. So whenever rain is threatening, I put mud guards on and I put my shoe covers in there. It's warm, so I don't care if my jersey gets wet. It dries real quickly. In the winter, when it's 50, which is 10°C or below, I have either a rain vest or rain cape. Keep my body warm. You don't want to be wet and cold. It uses more calories. Your body uses more calories to keep you warm, and then it affects your riding. So you can see, all I'm doing is waving at what they're waving at. Now look at me, I'm using the road. I already checked, I knew nothing was coming. There's a lot of gravel. And you see that rider, Malcolm, stood up as he went through that. I just got on the road because it was clear. Those are the things that prevent flats. You stay away from all that debris and stuff. You don't know what's in there. It might not just be rock. There'll probably be glass, pieces of glass that were blown there. And on a day where it's damp or wet, it will stick to your tire. It may not cause a flat right away, but it will work its way in the rubber. So a lot of times, whenever possible, if I go through a lot of glass because I could not use the road, I basically stop, spin the tire, and especially if you want to make sure you're wearing gloves, and I spin the tire and clean the debris off my tire, especially if it's glass, because it will work its way in the rubber. It sticks to the rubber when it's wet. So I make the time to do that. Just lessens your chances of having flats. Those are all the things we go over that cuts our tire. You know, if you look at your tire over the life of it, you get cuts on it. It's all this stuff on the road that's cutting your tire. They don't cause flats, but they cut up your tire because it just didn't go through. So by you lightening the load, then all you end up with maybe are cuts as opposed to flats. That's the way you want to look at that. You don't have to stand, just practice that from time to time. You can be in the drops or on the hoods and just, all you do is you press on, even put your foot at 6 o'clock and press down, it unloads the saddle. And I'm emphasizing this for our group because we've been having a lot of flats lately. And we're spending money on tubes. I need to buy stock in Continental or something. So hopefully, I was teasing Mark. I said he's had his quota of flats for the winter. There's a lot of debris on the road that comes from the trucks that drive and carry, stuff to construction sites and whatever else. Everything gets blown to the side as the cars drive by, and they end up on the side of the road. A few heavy rains usually will wash them away, but always have them. So you can see we're just kind of rolling along at 36 kilometers an hour. We're going into the wind. The wind is kind of light at this time because it's early in the morning, but still, you're working. I move over because those reflectors, the square reflectors, you don't want it. That can cause a flat if you hit them square on. So those are the kind of things. It doesn't have to be sharp objects. The funny thing is to mention that as a hole, that's the same hole from last week. So everybody's aware of it. Mark is at the front, so he points that out, the same hole we hit. But what I was going to say is while Christian, Paul, and I were on the way to meet this group, some driver ran over a curb at regular speed, maybe 20, 30 miles an hour, and just blew his tire. I don't know what he was doing. Right after a traffic stop, he just went through and just hit the curb and ended up basically disabling his vehicle. Just that blunt force, you could hear the tire blow. I don't know, it seemed like he was not paying attention. So, I was like, whatever he was doing, he's got time to do it now because he was stranded. It's just people just don't pay attention. The car's going forward and they're looking down or something because it was just one of those weird things. It was not necessary. There were 3 cars on the road, 6:50 in the morning, something like that, and he ran into the curb at 30 miles an hour, and we just heard pow. He had to pull over in the grass in the middle of the boulevard. And that was it. Couldn't continue driving. So Mark pulls off. So you watch where I am. I'm there because the wind is coming from the front and a little to the left. So I'm not really too concerned. I'm not overlapping, but I'm in that position so I can see around because there's a lot of stuff on the road. I want to make sure I avoid them. And you see Mike is giving me some room because Mike is he's on his bars. We're not in a tight baseline. So he's not right behind me because he wants to cheat the wind here. But when the group is very tight, he doesn't get on those bars. He'll use the regular drop bars. You're gonna see in a little bit here that there's a miscommunication. Now the guy Malcolm in front of me has not been here for years. This road has changed. They built an overpass. In the past, we had to go to the right and we'd go over the tracks. Or to the right? We had to go right. There was no overpass. So Malcolm is thinking, after Dan pulls off, Malcolm is thinking the road goes to the right. Watch. Miscommunication. So Dan balances his bike, stays out of the way, forces him to go right because I told Malcolm straight when I saw him make that move. So Dan is on the little feeder there. And so I think he slows down and turns back around because we don't have a lot of traffic. I think he could have come over, it would have been a longer ride. So we kind of back off the pace here a little bit. Malcolm just didn't know that the last time he lived here, everything went to the right. There was no overpass. Now, if you go to the right, you can't get across because they don't allow the road to go over the railroad tracks anymore. It goes to the high school on the right there that you see, the brown building, Magnolia High School. So we turn up the power a little bit. I mean, Malcolm pulls off. I get back to the front. This is not where I want to be at this point. But I back off, and then in a little while, I ask if Dan is back. Dan is an excellent climber, so he catches up before we really go very far. I'm asking if he's back. So Victor goes. I just let him go because we're waiting for Dan. And even though we weren't, that's not my plan. So that's Victor's thing. So I'm climbing right at the top of endurance pace, zone 2. We're looking for him. I'm asking if he's back. I think I get on the road to look, and then Mark asks also if Dan's back.
No one knows.
So I back off. Once they say no, I back off. Then they check again. Now we're finished with the climb. We're kind of rolling. This will give him a chance to catch up. So he's back. So now that he's back, I decide, okay, let's go catch Victor. I probably should not have done this because I expended a lot of energy early in the ride. But, I like the workout, so in my mind, I'm like, okay, let's just roll up to Victor here. I think he's already backing off. He does those intervals on the climbs. It was a very muggy morning. I have my jersey open, even though it's a flyweight. I have it open. You can see it bubbling a little bit, but it felt really good to have that wind just flowing over. Ended up drinking a lot of water in this ride, like 6 bottles. So we catch up to Victor, and I just ride past him. Keep the group going. that light on low steady, and it's a lot more tolerable in the group than when it's flashing. Even on the lowest setting, when it's flashing, it bothers people. I've had 2 people mention that. Dan did, Dan the man, and then Christian mentioned it. So I decided to just put it on steady when I'm in the group, when I use this light. In a little while, we hear there's a flat. Somebody has a flat. I think it's here. Right there. So I'm looking to see where a good place to stop. That's the first thing when there's a flat, you want to be far away from the road. I see like a little area here that's perfect, and I just roll there.
This was the road I was telling you about.
So Paul had told me about this road that it goes into Magnolia a long time ago. They used to come down here, and I think he uses it when he goes to see his son, or 1774, one of them to go to Waco. So Mark had the flat, he pulled over here, and you can see we're way off the road. That's what you want to do. You want to get off the highway. Okay. You're not very visible when you're standing around. So I walk over to help.
All right, let's put a clock on this.
The good thing was Mark's wheels were not dirty, so it was not bad working on them, because you get a little bit of dirt in your hand because the rubber, the tire, but it wasn't bad. I mean, some people's wheels sometimes they get you all messy. You just need one. That's Paul over there going to fertilize the trees. You know, the plants use nitrogen, and nitrogen's in our peat, and that's just a natural thing. So he's using this opportunity. You guys gonna stand around him messing around? Might as well, make the most of this time. So I get the stuff, I'm checking the tire. Make sure when you do that, don't move your hands too fast. Mark handed me the wrong tube, and then Mike corrected it. He was handing me the tube I had removed.
It's the little things you do for me.
So I sped it up here. I took my pump just to go ahead and make sure the tube is properly seated before he uses the canister he's going to use. I can put 85 psi with that little pump before my arms start to hurt. It takes about 25-30 seconds to do. So I'm just putting maybe like 30 or 40 psi so I can check to make sure the tube is not pinched, because Mark's wheel, and I think a lot of the zip wheel, that beads very tight, and that tire was on tight. We had to fight to get it on there. So I want to make sure everything there. So I hand it to him so he can air it up. The CO2 is very quick, but once you get home, you really want to put regular air in it, because it doesn't last very long. It'll get you home. It'll finish that day. But a day or so, it gets softer really quick compared to the normal air that we put in there. That's been my experience with them. So I'm helping him adjust his brake. We found out his brakes were so hard to move. It shouldn't be that hard to move, but they were rubbing. I don't know when we took the wheel off the bump, but it was so hard to move the brakes. The brakes should be tight in the frame, the caliper, but you should be able to move it without fighting too much. And then the release, where you release the brakes, were off to where when I closed it, his brakes were too close to the wheel. But he got it sorted because on Sunday it looked fine. So Mark is already up the road after this repair. So we start to go, and Michael's on the road. Somebody says, I think Paul says car back, so I move over so Michael can come off. It's just a 2-lane, and it's a bridge. It's a little crappy, so you notice I'm standing to get across the bridge. Mark's already up the road. He's riding, and he's off the front. That guy's blowing at another car, because this car was trying to move over. It's like, instead of just waiting, if you want to give us room, Why would you go into oncoming traffic? You know, some of the decisions that drivers make is I wait for 2 or 3 seconds. There's a 2x4 on the side of the road. I don't know where those things come from. They're a hazard to us. One time I stopped, I think it was on Sunday on the way back in the Woodlands. There was a big piece on the road, and I stopped and threw it off the shoulder. And it was basically in the middle of the lane. It would affect even a car. It looked like it had fallen off of some truck or something. It's like a 6-foot piece of 2x4 on the road. Those things cost money. If I had my car, I would have thrown it in the back. I'll find a project for those. I decided to, in a little while, I decided to move to the front. Paul, the guy who went to fertilize the trees, he's at the front. He's one of our 70-plus-year-old guys in the group. A real strong rider. We're not making up room on Mark, so I move up, and then he was gonna pull off, and then I told him stay where you are. You see him look behind. I told him stay where you are, so he stayed there. I just moved up, to give him a wheel, and I just wanted to do the work at this point because it was hard because Mark was riding hard, and I was chasing him, so I had to pretty much ride hard to catch him. I don't even know if you'll see me here, but we're going into the wind, up a grade. I don't even know if it's registered. Then it says 1, 2, it's flashing 1 and 2. But it's a grade into the wind, and I'm keeping the pace hard to get up to Mark. Now, if you've noticed, I pulled early. I went over the overpass in front, caught up to Victor. Now I'm back at the front. So all of this stuff, I pay for it later when the boys start to play, and I wasn't able to participate. It's just something you have to keep in mind now. Nothing wrong with that. If you do that enough times, you will still have more. As you get stronger, you'll be able to go with attacks even after doing all this work. But sometimes it's hard to gauge, to know exactly what you'll have left. It's kind of like your legs go on empty. The biggest thing to remember is that when you're doing that, don't go into red. If you stay around your threshold, I mean, you kind of learn from your training. Don't spend too much time in the red, and you will be able to recover. So that's part of it. That's kind of when you train. So my Saturday rides, I just want to get home hammered. That's my goal. So that's the construction. I'd already looked back, so I'm using the road, and I let them know to use the road. Mark is riding the shoulder on the right side of the barrels. I don't do that because I've got a lot of people following me. That's just not the safest route. You can see all that equipment there. So we'd be darting in and out. So at this point, we use the road. And as soon as it gets a little better, there's a lot of mud, and then I get back on the shoulder. You have to ride for the people following you. You can't just do it just for you. So you have to make those kind of decisions to keep everybody safe. And it's just better to use the road when there's a hazard on the shoulder. Only use the shoulder if it's practical and safe. That guy's moving a little too quick. Michael looked around and he was a little closer than he needed to be, especially since the other lane was open. Keeping my cadence about 75 to 85, something like that, in that range. We're getting closer to Mark. You can't see Mark, but we're pretty much catching up to him. The road will begin to go up, and that's where I close it up, and then we're going to turn left. see me on the road there. Yeah, we've already caught Mark. Mark's on the right. I got in front of Mark there. We're going to be turning left. It's Christian moving up the bunch.
Left on!
So we're checking for traffic because we're going to be turning left. It's not clear yet. We're waiting till it's clear so we can move over in the left lane, because where the red light is, we're going to be turning. So it's clear here. Some of the drivers are back there. They wait. But the riders in the back let them know that we needed to turn. So when you're in a group, that's kind of your role. If you're back there, you got to let the drivers know what the head of the group's trying to do, if you're aware. So it took us a bit of time to catch up to Mark. And so at this light, after the light, we decide to roll together. Mark and I just kind of start going. There's a gap to the group after the light. So we just resume what we're doing. That's Malcolm here. If you notice, you haven't seen Jerry, you haven't seen Dan, you haven't seen Gary. So if you're competing and you are trying to do well in that competition, what you would do in this scenario is you would not be at the front doing what I'm doing unless your role was working for a teammate. You would basically be marking the people that are closest to you, or what they call your competitors, the main guys. You would be, so for example, if this were a race, I wouldn't be doing all this pulling. I'd pull for a little while and I would drift to the back and I would sit and wait for the faster guys when they would make their move. That's kind of what you would do. It's a group ride. It's not a race, so per se. So basically, I'm just getting a workout. Now, doesn't change tactics. Even in a group ride, if you want to say, okay, when these guys go, I want to make sure I've got enough to go with them. Then what you would do is you would limit the pulling you were doing. You wouldn't pull as much as you see me pulling here. So keep that in mind. So my goal here for this ride was to basically empty the tank. So that's why you see me doing all this work. I'm getting ready for the upcoming Grand Fondos in October. We may do one or two of them. And so I want to make sure that I hammer myself. So we're going into the wind this whole time. I think I'm still at the front. Mark and I were trading places for a bit. I'm behind Mark at this time. Yeah, I'm behind Mark. So this is what I mean, that everybody has a goal. There are a lot of fast riders sitting in the back. Christian sitting here in front of Malcolm. Christian Strong. So I want to make sure that I leave it all on the road today. That's the mindset I came to the ride with. We're in Magnolia here, I believe, is the main drag.
This is how I come. And then I place. Over there. Yeah.
So we're going through downtown Magnolia, I believe. So Paul was telling me that that's the road that he uses when he goes to Waco. That was 1774. And I think he heads north. So we're cutting through downtown Magnolia. We're going to jump on a back road here. We're going to end up, I think, on Sawmill Road. We got held up at the stop sign because there was, even though there's a four-way stop, there was a car coming from the left. And so we were a bit delayed. I think that's me coming up there. Yeah, my light's flashing. The cycle light just hit the spot. They're just continuing to make nice stuff for us.
Clear.
So we're out of town. We're back on this road. I believe this might be Sawmill Road. I move up to Victor. You can hear the wind. The wind was blowing from the west, I believe, most of the morning. Southwest. So Mike is on Mark's wheel, Victor is on Mike's wheel, and I rolled up behind Victor. And consistent with what Chris asked about, at this point, even though I'm getting something to eat, if you look at my head, I'm still looking forward. Always keep your eyes forward, because you don't want to be surprised. The same thing when you drive a car, you don't want to look away, especially when you're in slow moving traffic in a car. You know how when you look away and you see brake lights, you panic? So you always want to look forward, regardless of what you're doing when you're following the wheels. So you see Victor goes left, I'll go right. I want to always be able to see. Mark has pulled off. So now I know what's going on. So I move left so Mark can have some room as we go by him. So you can see I'm just a little to the left of the white line. That allows me to see around Victor. Right there, I can see around him. So when Victor moves to the left, what I usually do is I would move to the right so I can see around him, so I don't have to go out in the traffic, especially if it's clear and safe on the right. If not, I can look around him like you saw Christian do earlier in the ride. You don't have to be directly behind somebody the entire time. I'm talking about just slight, they're not really movements, they're more like drifts. You see how Victor is just gradually drifting away from the white line and drifting back to the white line? That's what it is. You're using your hips. You see where I am? I'm just tracking the outside of the line, and I'm just moving within maybe, it's almost like 2 to 3 inches. My movements, I'm on either side of the white line. That's what I mean. You're using your hips. So it does not bother people that are following you. They're not drastic, aggressive movements. That's normal. That's how you need to ride. Even when you ride solo, you use your hips. That's how you get around debris. You don't need to make sharp movements. It's gradual. That's why you must always look ahead. Now we're riding like a bunch of maniacs because we're riding into this wind here at almost 38, 39 kilometers an hour. Like we're riding with the wind behind us. That takes a lot of energy. All the things that made this ride a great workout on Saturday. This is Nickel Sawmill Road. We're headed south into the wind. You hear what we heard. We could not talk much because you would not understand what people were saying. So at this point of the ride, I'm feeling good. I'm rolling on. I'm just looking forward to getting to the front. I'm looking up ahead. You saw me look up. Look over Victor. I'm looking to see if we've got clean pavement with no obstacles or potholes where we're riding. That's why I look ahead. So you just want to periodically look around. You don't have to do it all the time. See, I did it again. Just making sure nothing's coming that will be in our path. Because if there is, then I would look behind for traffic early enough and use the road if it were necessary. Victor's hands got numb, so he's working his fingers. When you're fitted right, there should be no weight on your bars. My weight's on my saddle and my feet. And what usually ends up happening is you can have your saddle right, but if your cleats are not set up correctly to where your foot is mated with the shoe, your foot gets numb, and then you try to unload your foot by putting weight on your hands. So all those little things matter. Fit is very complicated, and that's why I invested a lot of time into the videos that I put out on the channel. But I still get people that even after watching the videos are saying, you know, I just can't get it right. And then they take advantage of our remote service and we dial them in and get them going. It's a lot easier to do somebody locally here in the studio because I can be done in 45 minutes to an hour for our quick fits versus doing remotely. Remotely require more work because you have to really explain stuff to people because they're doing it. So Mike pulled off and Victor's leading. And you see he's using the road. I'm staying a little to his right. Just out of habit. I'm letting people know there's stuff coming up. I'm doing this very vigorously because that can cause you to fall. That was like a piece of a car out of the headlight or something. You don't want to roll over that. That's why I did that like I did. I wanted them to take it seriously. That's another reason I look around. If Victor gives the warning, it's my responsibility to pass the warning down through the line and the guy behind me and so forth and so on. Don't receive the warning and don't let other people know. Victor's left hand's getting numb. He's working his finger. That's the way, that's what you have to do. And then another reason for looking around, see, I see a climb coming. You need to know what's coming so you can decide whether you want to stay in the gear you're in or whether you need to back off before you get to the climb. You know, you have to make your decision. So right here, I believe I downshift. I'm feeling good, so I go ahead and raise my cadence. There are some days where I'll be riding and I don't feel like riding with a high cadence. And so in that situation, I would just use a milder or more moderate cadence. You never ride the same every day. It's always different depending on what's going on with you and how you feel. So Victor's done, he pulled off. I keep the tempo the same. I just roll through. We're going hard here into the wind. And the people in the back are getting the benefit of the draft. So I know I'm working harder. I don't believe I stayed here too long. Because I know I've been pulling most of the early part of this ride. There will come a time I tried to get off the front, and I think Paul came through because he was trying to roll off too, but something happened where I end up back at the front because nobody wanted to come through. You know, I'm not really sure. Maybe miscommunication, but you'll see it in a little while. Yeah, so I pull off. I check for traffic. Nothing's there. I pull off. I'm still looking back for traffic. Now, I don't know what's going on here. I guess Paul is pulling off. But because of the cars, I end up moving back to the front. Because I think there's a car that came by, but he used the other lane. But somehow I end up back in the front. And I'm trying to get off the front. So it's one of those things. So I'm back in the front. I'm still waiting for them to go. I'm telling Paul to rotate around, like roll through or something. I don't know. Yeah, do it again. Yeah, now Mark comes to the front. And then Christian. Because I think Paul pulled out of the line. So now I'm looking for a gap. As soon as I find a gap, I will go in. So I think Bart leaves a gap. Yeah, that's Bart. Okay. But then he ends up asking me, are you getting in? Because what happened is, even though he gave me that gap, I didn't go on the shoulder. Yeah, he asked me if I'm coming in. I told him, yeah, I was just slowing down. Because he didn't know what I was doing. Well, I saw this guardrail. I don't like being by the guardrail because it gets real narrow. And that's why I was using the road. So Bart didn't know. And so he asked me, and I told him, yeah, I'm just trying to stay in the wind to not use my brakes because we were descending. So I got back in there, and then Paul is behind Paul H here. I didn't want to stay on the front. I've been pulling for so long. We're going into this wind. This is going to be a long ride. You all noticed when we turned out of Montgomery onto Nichols Sawmill Road, I took a gel there. So now Christian is up there in front of me. I'm right behind Michael. Yeah, I'm letting them know there's a lot of debris by this guardrail. And there's a bridge. So it's very narrow. By the bridge, you don't need to ride on the right side of the white line in this situation. Use the lane. That's just too close to that wall. You don't want to do that. Use the lane. Even if you ride in solo, use the lane. In fact, if I were riding solo, I'd be further out on that bridge, and then I can move back over after the bridge. There's more crap over there. So you see where I am. I'm avoiding all the debris as much as possible. It's not that busy. These guys can move over. So I stay next to the white line, a little to the left of it. Until that shoulder gets better, I'm not getting out there. You can see all the drivers are passing. This is a well-known bike route per se. It was published in a book called Bicycling the Houston Area. I don't have the name of the authors, but it's an old book. I own a copy of it. They put together maps with high exercise potential in different parts of town, and this is one of the roads on that route. So Mark's pulling off here, and after this, the camera, we ran out of battery power, so we pick it up at the stop in a little bit. So we got a new battery in there, and we're about ready to leave.
We're gonna go here.
It's so muggy. We've had stuff to drink, and we've loaded our bottles. Christian is over there chatting with the officer. I think he's a constable or something. Christian and Mark, I think. There's a group ride. There's a ride going on toward a cure. So the officers are monitoring all the intersections. Bart's there also.
I'm supposed to have an off-wind.
Oh, there he is. There's the other slacker right here.
This wasn't on my plan.
Man, this is elbow.
So you hear me tell them, let's do this. It's time to go. There's a grate right there, and the gaps are wide enough to catch your wheel. So we let people know to avoid that sewer grate. You see the grate? Yeah, if your wheel gets in there, it will stop you. So you got to avoid those. They're wide enough to grab a front wheel.
You guys are supposed to take it easy, man. This is supposed to be my off week.
So Paul's talking about the group's supposed to be going slower because this is his off week. I think this road is called Ranch Crest. Ranch Crest goes through a subdivision that will take us to a road called Old Hempstead Road. I went ahead and edited for time here. We're kind of getting started back after the stop. So this is Tim. I got to meet Tim. Tim started following Veloharmony on Strava on Monday today, actually. I saw the request on there. Tim rode with us Saturday and he rode with us on Sunday. Tim lives in the Woodlands. Malcolm rides an old school frame, a Pinarello. Kind of a gray day. Rain was expected around, I believe, noon or so. We missed it. We encountered a little bit after the stop, but we came across roads that had been hit by rain, but it didn't rain on us heavily. So I'm glad we had the mud guards on because they came in handy. That's Dan. So the ride's beginning to pick up. You can watch the speeds. You can kind of tell by the activity. That's the reason I edited it for time, because quite a bit through here with all the stops and stuff, we use that opportunity to kind of get back to being warmed up again. So right around here, we are getting outside of the subdivision, back on the open road. Paul and I are talking about the fact that the last several weeks we've had rain chances in the morning, but it's always come after lunch, which is great, you know, but we put the mud guards on anyway. So right around here, things start picking up. before I was letting Paul know the day he did that real long ride. This was the same road. As the pace begins to pick up, I move up. That's Jerry. So Jerry picks it up, goes to the front, and I think Dan goes along also. Dan on the left in the blue jersey there. Mike goes. Mike goes around Paul. So I move up. Go around Michael here. Went around Paulie. So when you're chasing like this, you don't want to blow everything. Basically, you want to just settle into some kind of tempo. Those guys had moved up to where he had, and then when Jerry went, Jerry turned up the pace, and they're trying to bridge up to Jerry. So I figured to do it about 40 kilometers an hour. So I'm going to say between 36 and 38 if possible, because the wind has picked up. So I settled into some kind of a rhythm here. Now my speed's dropping because the wind's picked up. It's still relatively flat. And I'm just edging the speed up. That's Gary. Or is it Greg? I think it's Greg. Greg Shop. Not Gary. Greg. But we're pretty much on them. It's a left turn right there. The officer on the corner for the Tour de Cure that's going on. They're using the same roads. It has been a hard ride. When the battery went out for quite a while, Christian had pulled. I had done an attack, and Jerry and Greg and Christian, I think, and a few other guys got away at a stop sign. We chased. My legs were dead because Paul came around, the guy who went to fertilize the tree earlier. He came around to help, but I was like, my legs were toast, so I really didn't even get on his wheel. I just held my pace. This was before the stop. So we've been riding hard. So right here we do just a little dog leg. This is 1774 south. We're gonna go on 1486 right here. Some of the guys are already turned, but we don't have it clear enough. It's an unprotected left turn. So we're waiting for the traffic. This is 1486. The officers are there because of the Tour de Cure. On the corner there. This is a nice road. A lot of climbs on this road. Up and down. Paul said he remembers this road. Yeah, I remember it too. This road was the same road where, those of you who watched the video, one time I was taking a pull and then the guys attacked us and we just kept it steady and called back and counterattacked the group a while back. So it's a good road. I like it. It goes to Richards. I mean, it's a long road. We use pieces of it every week that we come off. You know, it goes to Dacres and Dobbins and all those places. So it's a very, very good road. We're south of Dobbins and all those places today. We're not going to go up that far north. We're going to take Jackson Road. So I roll around Mark. We've already caught back up, but I want to get up to the guys in front. And when you're in the draft, if you're closer to the front, you don't get as much of a draft as the people who are further back. That's just the way it works. So as you get closer to the front, you get less of the increased draft. But I like to stay in the front to kind of see what's happening, see what's going on, you know. And if I'm feeling good, then I can help the group along. This is the calm before the storm. We're regrouping here and then we're going to start riding. I think I'm sitting on Dan's wheel, and Dan's the one who starts to sprint up the hill after those guys take their pull, and I just go ahead and pull off. So when you're riding, depending on what your goal is, you have to ask yourself whether it's a good point for you to dip into the red zone too much, or based on how you're feeling too. You never want to ride to where you're pedaling squares. That doesn't really teach your body the right thing. So if you've been working really hard and it gets to the point where your body needs a break, either you drift to the back or sit in more. You know, at the point that Dan started to go up that hill really fast, I was like, I need a break. And I basically pulled out early enough so the guys could come around, and I let them go. I drifted back to the people that had fallen off the pace. I ended up going behind Paul. Paul went around, he kept riding, and then I drifted back till I was picked up by Mark and them, who had fallen off the pace earlier. And you'll see it unfold, but the key is that you ride within yourself based on what you're trying to do. I had worked so hard early in the group ride. At that point, my legs were empty, and I did not want to just dig too much into my reserves. Especially since I still had two and a half hours left to ride, and I had planned on riding the next day. So those are all the things that help you make your decision. Everything felt hard on this ride. And then on I think it was Sunday night that I discovered that I had a problem with that tire. I don't know if I talked about it early in the narration. I may have, but I got that all sorted out. So, riding with 65, 68 psi, you know, because I was working really hard. You know, so the tire felt good. So yeah, you don't need 120. That's proof. So this is what. So Jerry moves to the front. I think this is not where he actually keeps the pace. So I think we come across some guys doing construction, and there's a bunch of mud over the road or something. But the pace is picking up here. This is is where the guys are building. There's going to be like a loop, an outer loop out here in the future. That's what they're building to go across this road. We avoid all the mud that's on the road from the heavy equipment. And once it gets this fast, I mean, we're going, it's windy, it's up and down, and you can see Paul moved up behind Christian here. So I think there are riders behind him, like I think Michael's behind him or whatever. But once you start falling out of the draft, it takes a lot of energy to get back in when it's hard. So you got to really stay close. Victor gets up on Jerry's wheel. So for some reason, everything felt hard to me. I'm working really hard at this point, and I'm like, You know, we're doing 45 kilometers an hour. Up, it's windy, up and down. I'm like, it just felt harder than it should have. And there are days when things go that way. You just have to train yourself to be able to tolerate it. You have to spend more time with that kind of workload to tolerate it. At this point, I'm fine. I'm sitting in there. Everything's nice. It's fast, but it's steady. You can hear the wind and you see the road going up. So you must always monitor how you feel, and that helps you make a decision whether you continue the effort because you want to teach your body to do things properly. So Jerry was the one forcing the pace. I mean, 45 kilometers an hour in these conditions, that was pretty hard. So he pulls off, he's letting people know about that sign. And I think Mike might be up there now, or Victor. I think it's Victor. So Jerry gets in front of Christian. Christian left a gap for Jerry. Jerry got in front of Christian. So while all of this is going on, I'm just feeling real crappy. I'm like, man, this should not feel this hard. I think I just did too much work early on, or just having an off day. I don't know. Just it shouldn't feel as hard as it was feeling to me. And I was like, this is weird. It should not be feeling hard like this. So right here, this is where, so the pace changes. And if you see my cadence, I'm staying around 100, which I usually can do all day. But my body was just feeling real crappy. So I don't know, I think I shifted up. Yeah, look at my cadence coming down a little bit. But then, what's his name? Dan just starts to sprint. So I just let him go. And then so Jerry goes around me, Christian goes around me, and I'm like, I'm just gonna hold my own effort. Now little Christian goes. And that's what you want to do when it's hard like that. It's like if they're forcing the pace and you come around, you go, you do what Christian did. You go around them and you change the pace. So now they have to chase up the Christian. You know it's hard. Christian's up the road, Dan's looking around. He started it, now he's looking around. And that's Paul bridging up to them. That's what I mean. It's like, I don't know why I felt so bad, because it wasn't that hard. I could hold this effort, but my body was like protesting. I think, it's just one of those days. You got to listen to how you feel, because if you go too deep into the red when you're feeling bad, then sometimes you can set yourself back, or you just end up blowing the rest of the ride to where you end up crawling home. So you got to really monitor how you feel. So what I did was I backed off. My heart rate is still close. I'm close in the zone. I'm just keeping it steady. I'm behind Paul. Paul let them go. He's holding the camera. I went ahead and edited for time. We ended up being like maybe 15, 20 seconds behind them. I like the move that Christian did. They're right up the road. They're not that far. I like the move that Christian made after they went around me. He went up the front and forced the pace even more. Tonight here it starts to rain. At this point, Paul H., Mark, and I believe Tim catch up to me, and I go ahead and to give Paul H. a break. I think I come to the front here. Yeah. I opened my jersey. It just felt hot, even though it's raining. It's very humid. It rained a little bit. We didn't get wet because of the rain. I mean, in a little while you'll see the roads are real saturated when we get to Jackson Road because it's raining up ahead. But we didn't get anything heavy. Big drops, and then they just pass quickly. So, you know, it's one of those things where I decided to use this as a teaching moment. There are times when you're able to do the effort, but your body's not up to it. You got to respect that, and you got to listen. I mean, you got to know that, okay, if I go any harder, I will be riding like cross-eyed, meaning you're not under control, you're not smooth. You don't want to ride like that. That's the main reason I pulled out of the line, because I didn't really want to sprint up that hill at that time. So whatever was going on, it was a combination of things. And so when I got back and I discovered that I was riding on less than 70 PSI on the rear, I was like, maybe that was part of it. I don't know, but I think that a combination of that and doing a lot of work early in the ride, it was just a hard day for me. I took a nap in the afternoon after this ride, and I felt much better. On Sunday, I felt like my old self. So it's just one of those days. It's just because there's no reason why I could not have held the effort. It just, everything felt hard. So you got to listen to yourself. If it doesn't feel like you're firing right, back off. You live the fight later. So you can see I'm pulling the group back here. So I'm feeling fine at this point. So something was going on, but still, the rest of the ride, I still felt like I was working all the way till we got home. So Paul H comes around, I'm gonna get on his wheel, then Tim says, I got him. And so I back off there, I let Tim get the wheel. Mark comes around and I slip onto Mark's wheel. We're probably about 15, 20 seconds off the pace of the front group. The road's twisty, so you can't see them. So it's better to, especially on a long climb, if you're doing a mountain climb or whatever, it's better to fall off the pace, give somebody a few seconds lead, than for you to blow completely, especially if you're just not feeling right. Everything felt wrong at that moment for me. I was like, man. So sometimes those kind of things can make you question, you know, have I done enough work and blah, blah, blah. So I wasn't worried about my training. What I was concerned about is why did everything feel so hard? So when I found out that my air pressure was low, I sent Paul a text late Sunday to let him know what I discovered. And so we have a way, we're going to be keeping up with that. We're going to be watching things. I don't really know what happened, because I usually air everything up and I usually don't have problems with it. Anyway, that's one explanation, because Sunday I felt fine. And the funny thing is, on Sunday I rode with the same wheel because I found out Sunday night. So I think Saturday was just a hard ride. And I told Tim on Sunday, he rode with us, I told him, yes, Saturday was a hard ride. So he said, oh, it's good to hear that. It's good to hear you say that, you know. So Mark's telling Paul Edge, great pole. We're almost towards, after that curve, I think we go up a hill and we get to Jackson. So right here, it started to slow down. I just go ahead and roll up. And I roll in front of Mark. It's like my tank was on empty because my legs were not firing. The funny thing is, I wasn't bonked or anything. I think just the glycogen. But when you're going hard, you're using different fuel sources. And I've been riding hard most of the ride, so I think for that moment, my body wasn't ready to perform. And that does happen. So you have to know to back off. I mean, I've won races where I felt bad early in the race, and then later on, I came on, my body started feeling good. So you never know. That's Victor up there. We're catching up to them. We're going to be turning. Victor fell off the pace of the front group. I hated falling off the pace, but I needed to let them go. I would have preferred to have been up there. I like to play with these guys, so we'll catch them next time. Jerry's right there. He and Mark started to talk about waiting for Scott and them, but Scott had said not to wait. They had turned off the power when we turned on 1486 off of 1774. Scott had mentioned to Mark that he was tired before we got to the stop. So he was tired on this Saturday. He didn't plan on working any harder than he'd already done in the early part of his ride. So Jerry told Mark that no, they don't want you to wait for them, because Mark wanted to wait for them. So we just resumed riding at this point. So whenever you have an off situation like the issue there, I felt like I should have been able to go with those guys. I can ride a lot harder than that. You have to go back and find out, okay, what's going on, what happened. So I basically had to go back in my mind after the ride. Okay, was it because I rode hard in the early part of the ride? I really didn't ride any harder than I normally do. And so I think I just worked harder the whole ride because of the low rear tire. That's what I believe. The rain already hit here. You can see even the mudguard spraying the camera. So Paul's trying to stay out of it. I'm not aware at this point, so I move back and you can see the spray. So Paul's gonna come on my left. In a little bit, I will tell Jerry when they come by, I said, we're not following you right now. We're gonna stay out of the spray. So we keep them within range, but we stay out of the spray. So I'm not aware that this is doing that to the camera, but Paul is. So in a little bit, I was wondering why he was doing that. I was like, man, you're wasting a lot of energy, because he kept sitting on my left. You will see in a little bit, you see all the rain. See all the water on the road. And there were scattered showers, so it was just rain in certain areas. This is all wet. When it's wet like this, even the mud guards will spray. But not a rooster tail, it just splatters, just like a car would splatter. So at this point now, I'm feeling fine again. I don't know, I'm not aware that the tire's low. The tire did not feel bad until I would stand. Then it felt squishy in the rear. But sitting down, it was okay. So I think overall, I just worked harder than I realized. And so when the boys wanted to play, I could not play. And I hated that. That's Jerry. I let him know that we're going to hang back. And I told him we don't want to stay out of the spray. and he acknowledges it, and they continue riding. Because you just need to hang back about a car length and a half, just enough to stay out of that rooster tail spray. And Victor is behind us because he's benefiting from our mud guards. And that's what Paul was telling him, that you will thank me for having mud guards. So Victor stayed with us on this wet part of the road. He didn't have to worry about being sprayed in the face. Those things just work. If you're gonna ride lots, you need to get a pair. They're inexpensive and they work. There's no reason not to. I only don't ride outdoors if there's lightning. That's the only time I don't go out. But if it's just rain, no. That shouldn't stop you from riding. In fact, the roads are less traveled by other road users, especially on the weekends. It's lightly traveled when it rains. A lot of people don't like to go out when it rains. They appear further than they actually are, and you'll see it will catch back up to them. I'm trying to stay out of water. This is where Paul is riding next to me, and I'm trying to figure out, why is he here? He's wasting a lot of energy. When I started to look at the clips, then I realized, yeah, there was so much water on the road that the mud guards were splattering the camera. And I'm riding by the white line because I really don't want to go through high water, just a lot of water. It splatters. And in a short while, we hit dry pavement. Right about here starts drying out. It's like it never rained. You see, you'll see the pavement getting drier, and then it will just be bone dry. So the rain only caught a certain area. So right around here, it starts to dry out. It's like the rain never even bothered this part. And they're right up there. So we start to ride up to them. Right here, Victor moves up, and I just slip behind him. I slip on his wheel. The guys are right up the road, maybe 3 car lengths, maybe 3 or 4. They're not that far. It's just a wide angle here. We kept them within range. And anytime it rains, that's how we do it. I hate following riders that are just going to spray your face. You just get all dirty. There's no point. And even the riders that follow closely, they end up staying on one side or the other because it's just not a whole lot of fun. So I agree with the guys in the UK that it just makes sense when you're riding in the rain to put mud guards on, because it keeps you clean and it keeps your mates clean. We're going up a climb here. All I'm doing is just revving up the gear I'm in. At this point, I'm feeling like my old self again. I end up staying seated the rest of the ride because the bike felt better when I was seated. Every time I would stand, the rear felt weird. And I thought maybe it's just the rain or whatever, but it just never dawned on me to check the pressure. I probably should have. It's one of those things. Not sure what was going on. I had put a new set of wheels on the blue bike. It can't be Urus, and maybe there was something going on with it. But it's all sorted now. But I hated missing out on that play on 1486. Christian is pulling at this point. I think he's near the front. We've caught up. We'll just sit in. We stay with them, and in a few miles they start to decide whether they're going to go left, right, or so we decide we're just going to go straight. Paul takes off. He wants to go straight, so Christian and I just go along with Paul. We're basically moving up and making sure that we stay with the main protagonists. That was Tim that we went by a little while there, and we're rolling up to the main bunch. At this point, my legs are back. I'm feeling fine. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. It was too weird. One moment, that's the thing about the body. The body is unpredictable. All you can do is work hard and prepare and try to learn from what your body's doing at that moment. The key is to always stay under control. If I had not stayed within myself, I wouldn't be riding this well here, a few minutes later up the road. So you can't ride to where you blow everything. Don't blow a gasket. And then once you catch back up, you want to basically stay tight. You don't want to fall back. You will see me go around. That's Paul there with the red jersey. You will see me go around him in a little while. We're going into the wind at almost 40 kilometers an hour. This was just a sweet ride. Just a sweet ride. And this was Christian's first time riding with this bunch. Christian was pulling. He just pulled up. He's on the left there. He's coming off the front. And at the end of the ride, we had talked about the light that I had done, the Cycle Light Dice TL50, because Christian has a light on his bike that is very tiny, and he's not that happy with it. And so he had asked about the light that I had done the review on, and I took it outside. And someone on the channel had asked if it worked on aero seat posts. It has a strap, and it fit on the giant propel that Christian has. It fit his aero seat post. So I sent him the link. And when I sent it to him, I had promised I would send him the link. But we tested it while we were outside at the end of the ride to make sure it would fit. So it worked on his aero seat post. Now his aero seat post is maybe about 12 inches. I'm guessing. It looks like it's about 12 inches. So if you have a very big, wide aero seat post, it may not work for you. But it worked on his because there's a strap. It can attach to most things. So he went ahead and asked me to send him the link, and I sent the link. And then I was surprised when I sent the link. He replied telling me, "Thank you for such a beautiful ride." Because he'd been traveling and doing different things, and he had, see, I go around Paul here because he's leaving gas. I'm ready to ride now. So I've forgotten all about the incident that happened back there. At this point, I'm just ready to ride. Yeah, Victor, I don't know what he's doing up there. He's staying off to the left, so Paul was letting him know there was a car coming. But anyway, Christian said, "Thank you for a beautiful ride." And I was like, "I'm glad you could come." He had fun, and that was really cool. Christian does a lot of racing, and his son does some races. So next weekend, he's taking his son to a place in Texas called Kerrville. His son's doing some racing there. So right here, we just move through these guys. They start to slow down too early before the intersection. I don't want to slow down at this point. My legs are firing again. It's time to go. That's Jerry. So there's an intersection coming in. This is where we have the discussion of whether we want to go left. And I say, yeah, let's go left. Because I'm ready to ride now. My body's feeling good. But then they couldn't make a decision because Scott, who had mapped out the route, is like 10, 15 minutes behind us. They're just doing their own thing. He and Bart. And you will hear the exchange here.
Watch that glass, guys.
There's a lot of glass on the shoulder there. I'm staying on the road at that point.
Well, let's stop here.
So we stop because they're trying to decide, do we go left? That will take us east.
I'm gonna wait for Scott and Bart. I could go straight or I could go left.
Let's go left.
And Malcolm.
Yeah, at this point I want to go left. I'm ready to ride now. My legs are feeling like themselves again. So, you know, Paul says he's going to go straight right there. He didn't want to push it too much. So Paul starts to go, and I just tell Christian, you know, we should just go straight with Paul. We all started together. We need to finish together. So
No, they from as soon as we got on the road, they turned it down.
yeah, so Jerry's telling Mark, you don't want to wait for those guys. They're 10 minutes plus because they just turned off the power.
Let's just.
So I just said, I tell Christian, let's go, and then we say goodbye to these guys.
Let's see. It's almost.
So we're just gonna go south.
We're gonna go straight. Let's head straight.
So we're just gonna go with Paul. So we end up riding up and catching up to Paul. I turned up the camera at this point. So I hope you all got a chance to get out there and get some K's in. Keep those doctors fired.